Good evening, everyone. Namaste, and welcome to India's first identity podcast, the Why Not IAM. In the part 1 and part 2, we have covered a lot of interesting things, and we have tried to get inside the depth of Sal's mind, the day in the life of an engineer, how he troubleshoots, and then many more topics were covered. I hope you have been enjoying it. I can really see that from the views and the comments. Thank you very much. This is the end, the part 3 of Sal's interaction with us. Here we have tried to cover topics around tools that an engineer would use, tools that an architect would use, what are the upcoming trends, upcoming technologies that as an engineer, as an architect, you should be focusing on. I believe part 3 will be as interesting and as engaging as part 1 and part 2. So enjoy your rest of the weekend by listening to the podcast. I'm your host Ravi, and I'll see you on the other side. Thank you very much for all the love and support that you've given me. And if you have liked the video, please click on the like button and comment down your interesting thoughts. That really helps us improve the quality of the podcast and ask interesting questions to our audience. Thank you.
Welcome to India's first identity podcast. Why not IAM?
Work with.
Okay. So moving back to the life as an engineer, what were some of the tools that you would recommend anyone currently working as an engineer to use? Like, I know we have tools like Splunk, we have tools like Postman, we have development tools like Visual Studio, SAML Tracer,
Sure.
or even PowerPoint. What are things that you use? First, let's talk about the engineer side of the world, because I believe the architect world differs a little bit, where you go more towards Draw.io and Lucid Charge and those kind of things. But let's first decode the tools that we can use currently to make sure that we are all the resources basically to fight the battle.
Sure. Yeah. From hands-on, I am.
Yes, yeah.
You nailed it, right? Postman is your friend. Whenever you're PingFederate, all Ping product, especially with new IDIs, is entirely API based. Everything you can do in the admin console, you can do via API. So Postman, know how to use Postman. Like, I'm not an API expert. I'm not a dev, but just being able to download a Postman collection and understanding how to input a Postman call to that API endpoint is huge. SAML Tracer, that's been around forever. And if you're not using that, I don't know what you're using to debug SAML. And I've run into customers that are like, we're not allowed to install that. I'm like, that's insane. That's insane. But the two main ones, I would say, from authentication troubleshooting perspective. But yes, Splunk is certainly a good soft skill. And I tend to go two ways on that. If you're good at Splunk, that's great. And being able to find a log entry that identifies maybe something that was a problem, whether that's security breach or just troubleshooting something, that's great. But to me, I want to see the raw log. I want to see it in order on my screen, use some kind of text editor like Text++ or whatever, Notepad++, I should say, that allows you to bookmark certain lines and do search across multiple log files at one time. I use Notepad++ more than I use like Splunk. That's a huge. Now, sometimes organizations don't allow you to use those, or they don't allow you to download the logs. Being proficient at, like in Linux, like VI and doing searching logs that way is great. Personally, I'm not that great at that. I prefer to use a tool like Notepad++.
Okay.
Think of other ones. There's, of course, one of the main tricks that I walk customers to is setting up a dummy connection, whether that for SAML, it's simple. At Ping, we give customers, and we had internally the application developed by one of our folks that when you throw SAML at it, it just displays it on the page. But you can also use like http:/anything. And again, if you post SAML to that page, it's just going to display it on the page. So you go through your flow, whatever that authentication flow in your IDP tool is, and you can prove that the authentication flow works by A, evaluating the log for that transaction, and then B, seeing the output on HTTP bin.org. So just having a dummy connection, I think, is one of the first things you should set up in your IDP. Before you want to put a new flow in, you start out with a form adapter, like a form login flow, and then you move it to a different policy that does either Kerberos or form, depending on where you are, plus MFA. Before you release those policies and apply them to your connections, you can just test them all with a dummy connection. I probably use in my lab the same dummy connection for testing 90% of my policies.
I think having a lab setup is really important, right? Like even you work as an architect, engineer, just have
Sure.
something set up locally on your personal laptop. If you come across any issues, just go fix it over there or set up the same environment. And
Yeah. As an architect at Ping, we have a bunch of tools at your disposal. But for me, what worked best was, use VM Fusion. And I had multiple VMs doing different roles. Like you can on your Mac install PingFederate directly, and it can be both the IDP and the SP in your testing and stuff like that. But what I tell new architects all the time and how I walk them through building a test lab is have a separate IDP PingFederate and have a separate SP PingFederate because number one, in the browser trace, Fiddler is another tool, right? Fiddler or Sample Tracer, you're going to see the redirects to different components, the IDP to the SP, right? But also when you're troubleshooting logs in your lab, if it's an IDP problem, it'll be in the IDP logs. If it's an SP problem, it'll be the SP log. So I like that separation. And in my own personal lab, because I worked with a lot of customers that were workforce deployments and 90% of organizations use Active Directory as their data store. I had an Active Directory server in my lab, right? So if you have the skills and the resources to get a patient code for Active Directory or even a 90-day trial, right? Having a domain controller or two in your lab is good. That domain controller, by the way, can also be your internal PKI. So you can do certificate-based testing, right? Certificate-based authentication testing. There's a lot of flexibility to having Active Directory in your own lab. And then you can, again, you've done PingFederate. Now you can do a Ping Access machine, do a Ping Central machine, Ping Directory machine. So anything you have, whether it's VM Fusion on the Mac or whatever it is on Windows that allows you to have a local lab and you have the resources on your machine to be able to run those VMs, I think that's super helpful.
okay. And what are some of the open source apps that are out there where you can do basic SAML testing or OAuth OpenID testing? Just if it's on your own lab.
I use the 2 months now already. The OAuth Playground. So
Nice.
OAuth Playground in a lab environment, you can install it directly on your Federate server in your production PingFederate. I wouldn't do that. But the OAuth Playground allows you to test all of the OAuth flows against your Ping IDP server. It's super easy to do authorization code implicit. All the different flows are there. So it's not open source, but that's what I use for that. And then for SAML, like I said, just a dummy connection to either HTTP bin or even it doesn't matter what you're posting to. You can post to google.com. You'll get an error when you get there, but you can see that the flow completed properly in the SAML tracer. So yeah, there's other kind of SAML tools, like I think SAML tool, which is by one login, and they have a bunch of decoding, encryption, and stuff like that. Examples, metadata examples, authent request examples that you can use. That's also pretty.
Moving on to the architecture side of the world, like some of the tools that you use on a regular basis, minus what we already did cover on the engineer side.
So as a customer success architect, I was post sales, right? And post deployment, usually post implementation, right? So the customer usually has PingFederate stood up by the time they get to me.
Okay.
So in terms of solutions that I was providing a lot of times, of course, I would use my lab to demo it. I would just create my own documentation with my own screenshots, just manually with Google Sheets or Google Word or Microsoft Word. I do use Draw to do flow diagrams. I wasn't using the same tools everyone else was for the most part. I think I might have been the only one using Draw that I versus some of the other tools out there, but that's what I use to do flow diagrams and stuff. But my solutions, my designs were more use case deployment. So it was more of describing components and putting additional context into it. So what I would do a lot of times is the use case may be documented on the Ping website, but it would either not be as in depth as a customer needed, or it might be too wordy, right? Depending on the audience. So sometimes I would take that documentation and just dumb it down or expand on it with my own screenshots with notes saying with an arrow to this and an arrow to this, explaining what everything was in more detail than maybe what was on the documentation. Personally, it was just a lot of Word, Excel, Draw.io, screenshots and stuff like that for me. It wasn't like where you would use, when you're doing an implementation diagram, and certainly use some of those other tools that have the different like components that you can drag and drop on the screen.
Okay, okay. And just to switch sides a little bit, I see a lot of viewers have shared me some of the questions around different roles that IAM industry has. Is it something that you can help us walk through the different roles from a beginner to the advanced level in terms of technical roles, or maybe different other roles that you have worked along with people like product manager or team lead? So what is the hierarchy basically in the IAM world?
Oh, you said roles, not rules, roles. Yeah.
Roles, yeah, roles.
Yeah. You mean like within a vendor or within like a ping?
At Ping as well as in an organization. You have experience of both. So
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
start off with an organization, which is a Ping customer versus a
Sure.
product company
Sure.
like Ping.
Yeah, if you're implementing an IAM solution at an organization, you want an IAM team, right? Obviously, depending on the available personnel, some person may take multiple roles, right? But you need someone that, especially if you're not leaning on a professional services organization to do the implementation, you need an architect to design the solution. You need the hands-on kind of global administrator that has access to everything and that can assign roles to other folks as needed. But you'll have like maybe identity management role, right? Folks that can create accounts or manage MFA devices for end users, right? An identity management role, as well as the application developer role who may need to leverage the Ping APIs to incorporate into their application. So those are different roles, but IAM specific. But on the IAM team in total, you need a project manager, especially during the implementation. But even post implementation, you need a project manager to continue managing onboarding of different capabilities or different applications within the organization, but mostly capabilities, right? So you do the PingFederate implementation, then you need to, the next phase is the multi-factor. And then the next phase is migrating to Ping directory or whatever the next phase is. You need a project manager. IAM is not just the IAM team. You need to leverage the networking team. You need to leverage the directory team. You need to leverage the load balancing team, the firewall team. All of these ancillary technologies are being leveraged by your solution. So someone that can do project management is key. You definitely probably need a business analyst role, right? Especially as maybe you start off like with a list of, hey, we're going to onboard these 25 to 50 SaaS solutions that we're using. They all support SAML. This is easy, right? This is low hanging. But then, okay, now we have 50, 200, sometimes more than SaaS. You have on-prem solutions that don't conform, that don't SAML or IDC spec that you need to integrate with. And you need a business analyst that's going to meet with those folks and get their do the requirements gathering and translate that, into kind of what the IAM team can do to integrate with that application. So you need not only the technical IAM folks, the global admins, the identity data admins, the dev admins, right? You also need business analysis, project management. Then the most important is you need an executive sponsor. You need someone that owns this platform and is pushing the agenda. You might get pushback, right? You may have 200 applications internally and 50 of them may be really excited about getting on board. And the other 50 may be ambivalent. And then another 50 may be like, you're not touching my application. Yeah, from an organization, there's kind of the different roles within a vendor like Ping. You have so many different kind of teams that make an organization like Ping successful. And starting out with obviously sales folks and architects and sales engineers, but also you have then the customer success team that is post sales, or the professional services team that will do keyboard configuration work for you. And that's, as most people know, that's a defined set of executables, right? These are the things we're going to do. This is the time we're going to do them for you, right? That's what professional services will come in and boom. Whereas customer success, that's more of a kind of an ongoing advisement service, whether it's in some vendors, I think it's paid for, and at Ping it was free, where we're going to be there. We're not there to do the help desk support for you for troubleshooting. We're also not there to do hands-on keyboard work like professional services, but we're there for everything else, right? We're there for advisement, best practices, demonstrations, right? Most people go above and beyond and do troubleshooting and so on and so forth. But you're mostly there to maximize their value, whether that's technically speaking to them or putting them in touch with product ownership teams for roadmaps, et cetera, stuff like that. And that's where you get the product owner teams, right? And the overall product management like team. each product has its own product owner. They all roll up into an overall platform perspective. So there's many different roles within an organization like Ping. I think you quickly will find what works best for your style of working. Like I can certainly do pre-sales if I wanted to, come in, meet with the customer, hear about the requirements, show them a demo that shows everything they want to do. But for my personal kind of satisfaction and also my personality, I think I'm more suited to a post-sales role where I can maintain an ongoing relationship with a customer, right? So some of the customers or clients that I work that Ping, I worked for years, 4 or 5 years. So you get to know them and you go on that journey with them and then you become their trusted advisor. Whereas in the beginning, you may need to gain their trust. But once you have a good working relationship with them, then they tend to come to you. And I personally get more satisfaction out of doing that than the pre-sales stuff. But from a technical perspective, it's all the same skill set, right? So again, we're going back to the soft skills. What are you good at? What are you better at in terms of where do you want your career to go? Yeah.
So I think just to summarize this, on an organization level, you will definitely start off by having a group of business analysts to talk to your application owners in terms of completing the project work. And then you'll have a set of operations team, support team, and then you'll have engineering team where you'll have a level 1, level 2 engineer, again a manager and a lead to run that show there, also a manager and a lead on the business analyst side. Then you will have a further hierarchy where you'll have architects and project managers and product managers overall making sure that things are going in well. And then definitely the executive group of representative leaders who is there to make sure that they have all the right set of approvals to run the show. Right.
Right.
Now, moving on to the product company structure, over there, you will have, I can divide this into two segments, post sale and pre sales. It could be pre sales, it could be sales and marketing initially, trying to get customer. And once the customer is inside, then comes the customer success support, I think professional services. Then you have the customer support engineers, level 1, level 2, level 3. I think that's how customer support manages the day in, day out escalations. The customer success architect manages the business side to make sure that client is able to get to their roadmap. And then the professional service is more aligned towards, okay, if there is a use case, let me help them do hands on and fix, right?
Yeah. And there's much more, of course, right? There's channel
Yeah.
partner integrations, right? So you have a bunch of both technical partners that work with Ping that are both selling Ping and also implementing solutions for customers that buy Ping software. So that's another kind of department there. There's at Ping itself, there's folks that work on the site reliability of the IDaaS platform, as well as the managed service that they provide with the PingFederate and the clean your own private cloud. So there's a lot of ways to go when you are working at an IAM vendor like Ping. I'm sure other vendors are similarly aligned.
So now, Sal, I'll move on to some of the questions that was shared to me by the audience, some from different groups. Like one of them being one of the favorites, right? Is why do organization or why does organization choose PingFederate over any other IAM tool? Like in one line, if you have to say it, why
Sure.
Ping?
Yeah, with PingFederate specifically or Ping authentication platform specifically, I think that it gets used a lot of times because of its ability to integrate with a lot of service or applications that don't comply to standards like OIDC and SAML. We have a lot of integrations that we can do with other platforms. There's, I think, much more of that than there are with the other competing vendors.
Okay, okay. And then if you look at the upcoming future scopes, future technologies, what are some of the things that as an engineer, as an architect, people should start getting in any three technology in the future that an architect or an engineer would use and they should be aware of?
Yeah, from a kind of like a strategy perspective, certainly be aware of zero trust awareness there. And not only Ping, but there are other vendors now that are coming out with orchestration platforms. And that's like where everything's going, right? Orchestrating a journey, integrating not only Ping's tools, but other tools that Ping integrates with through that orchestration platform. So if you're Ping specific, would be DaVinci, right? That would be the main thing there.
So orchestration, zero trust, passwordless, DevOps could be some of the recent trending things, right? That people should be prepared.
Absolutely.
Now, then coming to another question, which is, so how do you think the market of access management would be in the next maybe 5, 10 years? Is there going to be many jobs, less jobs across the world, right? What can you predict?
I think that there are many jobs and there's going to be many more because this space is only going to be more and more critical. And you're seeing that now already. But also what we're seeing now already is there's many people competing for those same jobs. So although the market is growing, it's also the folks in that space that are competing for those jobs are also growing as well.
Okay. And things like AI, ML, right? How can they shape the future of IAM in the future? What are
Well,
some of the use cases?
yeah, that's not something I've really considered too much yet. I've certainly used things like ChatGPT kind of as let's see what this can do for me. Like, for example, PingFederate, like object graph navigational language to do data transformation of attributes. And a lot of times we get questions from customers like, hey, I need help with this organal kind of script or whatever. And there are folks at Ping that are really well versed in it. I got to be okay with kind of modifying existing organal scripts and piecing together little bits of this and little bits of that. And there are some people that are really good at it. But like you can go to ChatGPT now and say, write me an organal expression that does this. It might not be perfect, but it's a start. But more and more, I think you're going to see people leveraging those tools to get them going on different bits. But I don't really know. I'm sure it's going to impact IAM just like it's going to impact everything else. I just haven't really put too much thought into that lately.
Okay. And one, this is not a rapid round, but then just I wanted, again, we did discuss this earlier in the past around your rules to follow for clearing a ping certification. So I know a lot of people out there are struggling to clear ping certifications. So can you walk us through your journey where you have, I think, cleared almost 3 to 4 certifications so far, right? In
Yeah.
different. So how was your journey, your roadmap to success to clear a ping certification?
Yeah. Well,
Like if we need to put it step by step. Yeah.
Ping certainly doesn't make it simple, right? There's no guide. It's really geared towards people that use Ping product every day. And not only do you need to use Ping product on a daily basis, but you need to flex all of the capabilities of that product. Let's just taking PingFederate, for example. When I first started at Ping, I probably wouldn't have passed the Ping certification exam if it existed at the time because I wasn't well versed on the service provider side of it. I think for folks that are not Ping customers, it's difficult because you have to download the free kind of license and run your own labs and run your own use cases and make up use cases. You're only going to learn by doing, I think, to pass the exam. And if you're not a Ping customer or a Ping employee, then you're going to really have to put a lot of time into it. Whereas if you are a Ping customer or a Ping employee, you're doing that on a day-to-day basis anyway. So naturally, you're going to get those skills that are needed to pass the exam. The exam's not that difficult for people that are using Ping day to day. But what I did for new architects that joined Ping when I was at Ping was put together a spreadsheet of about, just guessing off the top of my head because I don't have it anymore, 30 to 40 line items in order of building your Ping lab. And so this is twofold for new Ping employees, architects. I was even training some of the non-technical folks that were interested in learning with this spreadsheet. And it basically started out with all the different use cases, but building on components, right? Because you can't do this if you don't have that already. I had put together a spreadsheet that was how to build a lab. And if you can build that lab according to those line items based on the documentation and your own research. And yes, I was there to answer questions as well. If you can build your own lab by the end of that document, you should be able to pass the exam.
Okay.
And so one of the things here in my current status of not being employed is I was toying with I have PingFederate installed, obviously, and building that spreadsheet again. And this is how you build a lab. And oh, by the way, if you build a lab, then you should be able, and you understand how you built it, then you should be able to pass the exam. That's one of the kind of like personal goals I have to do.
Right. And I think Ping comes up with the certification program for all the tools that they have, right? Whether it's PingFed, Ping Access Directory, DaVinci.
I think right now they have PingFed, Ping Access, Ping Directory, and the Ping One Cloud Platform.
Okay.
Yeah. And again,
And
even with the Ping One Cloud Platform, that's again, you don't install it, right? You can get a free account and implement all the use cases, and that's how you learn. Right. There's no course for passing the exam. Well, if you look around, there's Okta ones, right? Even Okta gives you free exams, free practice exams, which are pretty close to what the real exam is, right? And Ping doesn't do that.
Okay. So in terms of fresher starting into access management, not just Ping or Okta, but in general, if a fresher listening to you from a college wants to get into the access management side of the world, because definitely we need good engineers, analysts, architects to grow in the future, what would be your top 3 or 5 advice that you would want to give them while they are in college or while they are preparing to come and work in the IT field?
Yeah, I think if you're in college, like if I was in college, one of the things I would do is certainly look into those CISSP kind of certifications. That's going to give you not only IAM knowledge, but all those different domains, but that's going to give you a baseline of concepts and understanding the technologies that maybe understand it on an implementation or on a practice level, but at least you get concepts, right? So I would that's you can be in college and go for that. And if you graduate college with that kind of cert already, you're going to be very attractive to both IAM vendors as well as teams in organizations. So that's pretty big. But yeah, I would take advantage of free instances of different providers that you can get your hands on, whether that's Ping, Okta, Azure, and practice. That's my best advice. I learned everything by doing, and I learned everything on the job. So I can't stress more of just even at Ping, right? Like I had customers that wanted to integrate with Azure, Microsoft Office. I went out and got my own Azure instance, right? Yes, there's a free instance, but also if you want all of the functionality, you can pay per user. And I just had one user and it cost one user registered in Azure. It cost me $12 a month.
Okay.
I think $12 a month for most people is reasonable. And you can now have your own Azure instance, which you can federate with the Okta or Ping or whoever, and you can test conditional access policies and everything that Azure gives you in terms of an IAM experience. So yeah, free instances or even sometimes instances that may cost you a little bit, but are minimal, are very useful and practicing those technologies. AWS also has a free instance, and learning how AWS does IAM is very valuable, both from their own IAM platform as well as integrating with an IDP like PingFederate and how that works. You can do all that with their free instance. Salesforce, you can get a free developer account. Facebook, you can get a free developer account and integrate with all these IDPs and just learn how all those integrations work. Slack, you can get a free Slack account and learn how to do skim provisioning. So I would say that just using the actual products is the best way to give yourself a leg up if you are currently in school or just starting out, or maybe you're on a help desk but you want to get into IAM, right? That's the way to go.
And one last thing that I missed out is how important is knowing development, right? Helpful in the IAM industry. That's one. Second is, can someone get into the access side of the world without having a development knowledge?
Yeah. So obviously knowing development, whether that's like on just dabbling in it, being fully trained developer and able to apply for positions in development is definitely going to be a useful skill. But that said, you don't have to know development to be an IAM architect or to be on an IAM team, right? The developers develop the product, right? I'm an IAM solutions architect. Don't know anything about really development. Yes, okay, I know a little bit of HTML, right? And yes, I can modify scripts, PowerShell or whatever, but I'm in no way a coder. I don't know JavaScript. I don't know any languages at all. And I've been pretty successful. So it's not required depending on the job you're going for. If you just want to be an IAM professional, solutions architect or engineer, or work your way up from engineering to, and I don't even really like the term engineering because that to me is development, but just kind of IAM administrator or sysadmin, whatever. If you want to do that and then work your way up into kind of an architecture role, you do not need to be a development expert now.
Okay. So with that, Sal, I would want to conclude our conversation. And first and foremost, I really want to thank you for taking out time and spending such a great time. It was really insightful, a lot of learnings for me. And I hope all the listeners will have a great time listening to your experience, your thoughts, and then your inputs across wide varieties of things that we discussed. So I really want to thank you, Sal.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. Excited to hear the final product. And if anyone listening has any questions or anything I can help with, you can always find me on LinkedIn.
Sure, I'll link the handles on the description. And thank you again and have a great rest of the day, Sal. Thank you. You too. Bye.